I've trained people that sell yachts before. I've trained people that sell private jet hire. But the biggest deal was £12.5 million. Well, if you were to hire me for the day, well, if you hire one of my team for the day, rather, you'd be paying the best part of £4,000. So it's worth noting I was only diagnosed with autism about 2 years ago. So it's relatively new in my life. So when I was in sales at first, I didn't know that I was autistic. So the biggest tip that I give all my learners is that you have no subject was off limits, right? He asked about our childhood, our parents, our romantic relationships, our finances, our sex life. So you got to think we've done 5 months plus 5 months plus 9 months, and 19 months, nearly 2 years, still no child.
Do you have some rituals which happen at every GPRO meeting?
So if you do want to host one, or anyone watching this wants to host one, where you're doing it needs to have...
So I've always been quite interested in psychology, and one thing that stuck to my mind, I guess you know that, was the concept of habituation, where recurring things are systematically ignored by our brain. So, for example, the ticking of a clock, the smell of your own sweat, legal disclaimers that basically have no effect on our brain anymore. And you can also see it on YouTube, actually, where it has almost no effect on the viewers when the content creators say, please like and subscribe to my channel, blah, 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 because you've heard it a million times, right? So it also triggers the click whir effect, as Robert Cialdini described it. Like, here comes the ad. And that causes our brain to tune out, even if those people would have subscribed, if their brain actively processed it. So I thought, okay, what's the best way to avoid habituation and the click whir effect for my own channel? And I thought that talking about this effect is actually the best way to do it, because it turns out that for a lot of potential guests, the subscriber count is quite important, more important than views, indicating that they might come in the future when this channel is bigger. So now, since I hopefully have avoided you to tune out, it would be really nice if you could subscribe to this channel. It obviously doesn't cost you anything, and it would help me to get more interesting guests on this channel in the future. And YouTube still tends to show people their content quite independent from their subscriptions. So it has only advantages for you and for me, and at no cost. So just press that button. Thank you. You wrote me several things which sounded really interesting. So one thing we already talked about, you adopted a child. So I wonder why adopted, and what made you decided to go that way?
Yes, so my wife and I can't have children naturally. So we actually made a decision not to have children. That decision was several years ago, and then we had a cat, right? Sparky was his name, short for Spartacus, which I think is the greatest cat name ever. And basically, Sparky unfortunately passed away, and we sort of tried to fill the void, if you like, that he left in our lives, and we tried to fill it with holidays. It didn't work. We tried to get a dog, and when we looked after a friend's dog to see if it would be kind of the right fit for our lifestyle. My wife loved having the dog for the day. This dog was mad. It did laps of our house like it was in some kind of sprinting race. But the bits of the day my wife loved the most were going outside and walking with the dog, and when I referred to her as a dog mum. And as the day went on, I realised, okay, this woman doesn't want a dog. She wants a child. And at the end of the day, my wife said to me, do you want to get a dog? And I said, well, we could, but I think we should adopt a child instead. And she agreed. And then I like to say the rest is history, but that really oversimplifies the process. I don't know how much you know about the adoption process, Jan,
Now,
But
it would be my
it's-
next
it's-
question, because there might be people watching who might be in the same situation, because there might be women who are at a certain age and they are afraid of not having children. And I think I've seen that women without a child are the group with the highest risk of having depression, while women who have a child are actually the group with the lowest risk. So there might be a big reward if you decide to go that way. So I wonder if somebody's watching who might feel like, I would have loved to have a child, what will be the process to go through?
Yeah. So obviously adoption processes differ country to country and even county to county in the UK. But in England, the process is that, well, it starts with you getting in touch with your local sort of adoption place. Ours is called Adoption Counts, and asking, well, basically telling them that you want a baby. And we thought it was like the films when we first started. Like, hello, one baby, please. Thank you very much. Yeah, here's our address. You just drop him off. We'll look after him. But,
Like when you go to the dog shelter and you say like, oh, this dog is nice, we take it home, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we thought it was, but with babies. And it turns out that's not how it works. So the first maybe 5 months were filling out forms, which is fine. We expected that. Doing like online classes. But the thing was, it were online classes that were just videos. It wasn't live. It was like a hosted video. But the thing is, they're very clever about this, is they say you must log on at this time exactly, because what they want to see is how well can you follow instructions. Because if you can't follow a basic instruction to arrive on time on an online link, how will you follow all the instructions that follow on from that with the adoption process and all the things you need to do right for a child? So it's a bit of like a testing of your commitment and awareness at first.
It's a bit like when you come out of jail and you're on parole and they just want to check that you're capable of showing up at a certain time and you're responsible.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. I mean, some might argue it's the process in reverse. Once you have the child, you're very much trapped with having the child. But it's like the best jail ever in that regard. It is great. So it is worth it, by the way, before I go into this. It is worth the time it takes. But then following that, we then got an email to say that 5 months in, you can now start stage 1. Which made us go, what? Like, were we doing stage 0 before? What were those 5 months? But stage 1 wasn't that long. It was only maybe, and again, about 4 or 5 months or so. But the big thing in stage 1 was the 3-day face-to-face course that you had to go and do. And the course only runs on a Thursday, Friday, and Monday, only ever those 3 days, because after the Thursday and the Friday, it's so intense, and you're going through some really challenging material about, I won't go into too much detail, but about the things that can happen to children that means they need to be taken out of their homes and become adopted. Because again, it's not like the films. Parents don't just leave their kids outside of an orphanage. You know, that doesn't happen very often at all. It's more often that there's a problem in the house and the child has to be removed. So you have to learn about that. The thing is, when we did that course, there were 12 sets of parents that began the course on the Thursday. On the weekend, we mostly watched Disney films to cheer ourselves up because it was so heavy. And then on the Monday, only 7 couples returned out of the 12. 5 of them dropped out because it had been too intense. They hadn't realised the reality, and that was it.
Because
and then,
because of what the children had gone through, and you saw that, or like the whole process in general.
Essentially, yeah, it was. I think a bit of both, really. Realising how intense the process was going to be, but also realising they weren't going to get some child that had never had anything go wrong in its life apart from being left or being relinquished, as it's called. There was just so unlikely that would be the case. So,
but what age were the children? What age were the children?
Any age. Yeah, it's really sad, but any age you can have children experiencing this kind of abuse from 0 all the way up to 10, 12. Yeah, like I said, it's pretty intense stuff, so I don't want to go into too much detail. But yeah, after stage 1, you then go into stage 2. Stage 2 is longer and intense in a different way. And by the way, after each stage, you have to do a panel, which is a bit like this, except you have like 8 people from the local community, people like councillors, heads of the church, people like that, who essentially judge your suitability to go to the next stage. So stage 2, we met our social worker. He came round to our house, a guy called Andrew, and essentially he then had a series of conversations with us, some of the most intimate and prying conversations I've ever had in my entire life. No subject was off limits, right? He asked about our childhood, our parents, our romantic relationships, our finances, our sex life, like everything he asked about, which was a lot to go through. And then after stage 2, which lasted around about 9 months or so, at that point we were approved for adoption, but we still didn't have the child. So you got to think we've done 5 months plus 5 months plus 9 months, and 19 months, nearly 2 years, still no child. And then the matching process begins, and the matching process, you are essentially, it's a little bit like X Factor, if you're familiar with the show, in that you're up against all the other parents, and you're trying to get down to the final 3. And if you get down to the final 3, which is the decision of the matching people, you can't do anything about it other than fill your profile in and hope. You get down to the final 3, you get given more detail on the child. When you get that extra detail, you then decide, do you actually want to adopt that child or not?
Detail means you know, like the. I think we have a little bit of lag here, so
it's tiny.
yeah. So detail mean you know more about the history of the child because the age and the stuff you probably know beforehand.
Well, it's a bit different actually. The way it works here is that you essentially fill in a questionnaire with all of the things about the type of child you want, the age, the ethnicity, the gender. You say, this is what we want. Your social worker advises you on whether you're being too specific or not specific enough. And then when you go down to the final 3, that's often the first time you know of the child's existence. So we got to the final 3 times. The first time we said yes, we would adopt, and we lost out. And the only reason they could give us that we lost out was that our back garden was smaller than the other parents. Just like, what are we meant to do about that? I was.
I never realized that there is this much competition of adopting a child. I would be like, so for example, it might be like not the best comparison in the world, but I'm considering of getting a dog. So I actually, a few days ago, I did my license that I'm like capable of doing, like knowing the really basic knowledge, but it was like I could learn that in one evening, and then it was like a 30-minute multiple choice test. It's like a mini license for owning a dog. And
congratulations.
Thank you. I made it through, but like I said, it is really easy. So it's just make sure that you're not a complete idiot. And like say, when you come to a dog shelter, I think they are really happy if they find someone who is adopting a dog. And I would guess that the responsibility you take, and also financially taking a child, is much bigger. So I would guess that there are a lot more people that would be willing to adopt a dog than there would be to adopt a child. Of course, there are probably a lot more abandoned dogs than there are luckily abandoned childs. But still, it surprises me that they're not like happy that there is some decent couple who is like in a good, solid situation, I guess, and takes a child which has like this background. It would be like a huge step forward for them.
Yeah. So it depends on the criteria. So because we had said we want a child that is younger than 18 months, that is very competitive, because most couples or people, when they decide they want to adopt, they want a baby. very few couples say, I want to adopt a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old. So what you find is the older you go, the less competition there is. But because we never had a child, we wanted to start with a child that had the least possible exposure to any kind of abuse or problem. So therefore, it was competitive.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I would have guessed that, it's like the closest you get to having a real child. If you get a child which is just born for a few months, then it almost feels like it would be like yours from the beginning. So
the first time it was just the back garden. The second time we said no, because the child's needs were just a bit too complex for us to feel like we could cope. And the third time was Isaac, the Beaglet, as he's known. And he, we got matched with him in October 2023. And then we met him for the first time in December 23. And he came to live with us forever as of January 2024. So I've been his dad now for nearly 2 years. We'll be in about 2-3 months' time. And honestly, the best thing I've ever done. Even better than some of the games I run on GPRO. I know that's going to surprise you and a lot of people, but yeah, even better.
Nice. Congratulations, man. And yeah, that you went through all of that. I think that's not like, not a lot of people would be willing to go through 19 months or 2 years just to give a child a better life. And congrats, man.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Well, we try and give him a better life anyway. It doesn't always feel like we're managing most days, but we do our best.
Nice. So, what is your current job?
So, my current job, I am a national training manager, which basically means that I have a team of 6 trainers that I manage, plus an administrator, and I essentially make sure that they are all motivated, they turn up at the right place at the right time, they deliver the right training in the best way possible, whilst also delivering some of the training myself. We train sales, leadership, and digital sessions.
So basically you are managing people who then go into other companies and teach them how to do business.
Exactly. Spot on.
Nice. So is it a certain industry or is it just completely random, like general?
Any industry with a focus on business to business. We do a little bit of business to consumer, but it's only sort of big ticket items. Like if you're selling a car, I've trained people that sell yachts before. I've trained people that sell private jet hire. So it's only like really big stuff for individuals. We call it high net worth B2C is what we train.
It sounds like there's a lot of money going around in your business. So how much does the hour cost for me if I interview you now?
Well, if you were to hire me for the day, if you hire one of my team for the day, rather, you'd be paying the best part of £4,000. I don't know how it would cost to hire me, but you'd think more, as I'm the national manager. I'd give you a discount though, Jan. You can have a mate's rate.
Yeah, I guess so. If you're watching now, you see that I'm investing a lot of money here. So if you would subscribe to the channel so that I get more YouTube and sponsorship money that I can use to adapt for having John here, that would be really awesome.
Also, the mates rates thing is a joke, so you really need to do that because he's paying full price.
So, is it like when I want to have you, does it cost extra or is it also the £4,000?
I think it would be extra, but I have been requested by companies before to train them, but only when I was a trainer. Since I became national training manager, that hasn't happened. So I don't know what we charge. Yeah, I feel like I need to ask someone that question now. But yeah, it hasn't happened yet since I became the boss.
Maybe you've managed them so well that they're just much better.
Well, that's the idea, right? Is I don't want to be doing the training. I want them to do it, and that way I can spend more time with my son. I mean, that way I can look after the admin, maybe.
So how did you get there? Because it seems like every position which involves like high ticket sales, and probably the commissions are also quite high in that area. So it seems to be competitive. So how did you get into that position?
So, well, my career started in sales. So I started working for a telecoms company, a Virgin Media business, if you know it, and started out kind of pure cold calling, setting up meetings with senior people in organizations. And yeah, I was pretty good at that. As they promoted me into a full 360 role, doing everything from first call all the way through to closing the deal, which is pretty exciting. And I did a pretty good job. The biggest deal that I ever sold, admittedly with a team of people to help me, but it was me that started it off. But the biggest deal was £12.5 million. So that was pretty good. What's annoying is that closed the week after I left Virgin Media business. So obviously I got no commission from it, but my commission would have been a lot. Would have been a good amount. I could have put a deposit on a house and had money left over. That's the sort of commission we're talking about. But I left, which was the right decision for my career, but the wrong decision for my bank account. There you go. But anyway, so I went from there. I went into field sales, going out and doing meetings, and then I joined the company I'm at now, a company called Pareto. And I've worked here for 13 and a half years now, and worked my way up from sales to sales management. And at that point, I realized I got a bigger kick out of seeing other people be successful compared to any sale I'd made myself. So I moved eventually into training for about 10 years ago, and then worked my way up, and now national training manager.
Is there any of your knowledge which you think does apply to, let's say, I guess most people who are watching are not selling jets for millions, or the minority is having these high ticket items. So if you would, let's say, give me or someone who has like a regular business, a store, tips how to sell better, or like general consulting.
So the biggest tip that I give all my learners is that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that ratio. Listen more than you talk. Because what you tend to find is that if you're selling to somebody, that person will trust themselves more than they trust you. So if you sit there, like I was trying to sell to you, Jan, and I started telling you how great Pareto were, you might believe me, you might not. But ultimately, you would trust yourself more than you trust me. But if I ask you questions about what you're looking for in a recruitment and training provider, what's important to you, what challenges you have in your business, I listen to the answers, write them down, and then I use your words back to you. You will feel like you're convincing yourself. And if I ask the right questions, you might even do that. So that's the way we work from a consultative point of view. It's all about asking great questions, listening to the answers, and then using what you find out to give a pitch that is so tailored that it seems to answer all of the problems that you have outlined and solve all your challenges. So it's just logical. I've got the challenges, this is the solution, we move forward.
So it's basically that you listen to the customer and then you try to work it all in your head, and then you basically put it back into a pitch which perfectly matches what the person just said.
Exactly. Yeah. Would you like an example?
Sure.
Yeah. So there was a hairdresser that I was talking to, the owner of a hairdresser's, and I was a little skeptical at the start of the conversation because hairdressers don't tend to use a lot of internet connection. But it turned out that she had a chain of 6 salons. So that was, okay, that's decent size, that's worth my time. So I basically asked her about the internet, how she was using it, how she found it, and it turned out that there was a problem that she had noticed, which was that the internet was dropping out when the time came for people to pay, because they mostly use internet for guest Wi-Fi and for card payments. Problem was that I then basically asked the question, well, when those card payments don't go through, what impact does that have on your business? She said, oh, well, it costs us repeat business. We have to chase up the payments sometimes, which takes time and effort from us. And I said, okay, so how much do you think that's costing your business every week? And she said, well, in my current salon I'm in right now, we worked it out as costing us around about £200 a week. I said, right, and how many of your salons have this problem? She said, well, most of them, probably 5 out of the 6. So I said, okay, so you're telling me this problem is costing you £200 times 5 every week, so £1,000 a week. She went, yeah, that's right. I said, okay, so that's £4,000 a month it's costing you then, if we assume a 4-week month? She went, yeah. I said, which means for your business across the year, that's costing you £48,000 every year, plus, of course, what you're paying for your internet connections across your 6 salons. And she went, that's about nearly a quarter of our yearly turnover that this internet connection's costing me. You see, all I've done, Jan, is use her words, her numbers, and then just chunked it up a little bit, got to the top level, and then I just pitched her. I said, okay, well, would you be interested in hearing a solution to this problem, which, by the way, will cost you less than £48,000 every year? And she went, yes, I want to hear that solution. So, that whole deal was worth, we did all 6 shops in the end, was worth something like £25,000 a year on a 5-year contract, so £125,000 it was worth to me, well, to my company, and then I got the commission from it. So that's the way that we train people to work. But yeah, the company I'm at now is actually the company that trained me before when I started work in Virgin.
One thing I found really interesting, so I kind of know these kind of theories. So what you said to me is not completely new, because I also had some web design business, and I'm also doing like the talking to the customer and convincing them. So which I think for me it's not so easy as like the emotional part, because you said that you have been diagnosed with autism, and I believe that I'm in the spectrum as well. So, and I always felt like sales and this kind of wiring is not perfect unless you might have customers who have like the same kind of wiring and who are really detail oriented and they think the same way. While, for example, I can be super logical and have good arguments, but I'm kind of lacking a bit of the body language and the facial expression to support that. And it kind of might not convince the customer on that emotional level. So what is your experience regarding that?
Yeah, so it's worth noting I was only diagnosed with autism about 2 years ago. So it's relatively new in my life. So when I was in sales at first, I didn't know that I was autistic.
But I mean, not knowing it doesn't make you less autistic, I guess.
True.
It's not like you started being autistic once you've been diagnosed.
With my life, I suppose, my years in school, I was what you would think of as a classically autistic child. I was very clever, very academic, no friends. Just that my social skills were non-existent. And it wasn't until I got to university that I actually started thinking about, well, what can I do about this? Because having no friends, and also, by the way, having no girlfriend either, wasn't fun once I got to university. Because it turns out there was a lot more to university than just going to classes. Whereas at school, I could get away with classes, come home, that was my life. So something that I've always been able to do with my autism is to hyper-focus. And I can't exactly just choose to hyper-focus on something, but if I can kind of convince my brain that the outcome is worthwhile, i.e., if I get good at this, I get this reward, If I can get my brain on board with that idea, then I'm able to hyper-focus on something. And I managed to get my brain to realise that communication skills and linked to that humour would be a good thing to focus on. And so my university years, I basically spent so much of my time watching people and trying to mirror them, trying to mimic what they were doing. It's called masking as an actual autistic thing people do anyway. But I kind of went to sort of new levels of masking, because not only was I doing it subconsciously, but I was consciously trying to mirror the most popular people and do what they did. And then I would be in several different friendship groups, and what I would do is I would try and replicate, okay, I saw the most popular person in group A do that thing, so I'm going to do that thing with group B and see how it works out. And then I would do the same thing with group C. And by the time I got to group D, I was damn good at that thing, because I'd done it 3 times now. And that meant that could be a joke, it could be telling a story. You know, I sometimes tell other people's stories to have that feeling of being popular. And yeah, I kind of became a student of human communication by this, noticing how do people talk, what kind of rhythm, what kind of tonality, the pace, the volume, everything. And that actually set me up for a career in sales beautifully. Because in sales, you're doing all of that, thinking of what the other person's doing, while at the same time thinking about your own speech and language choices as well. So it's worth noting I do train autistic people in sales. And the thing that makes autistic people good at sales is that many autistic people are used to putting on a bit of a front, putting on a bit of a facade. And in sales, you don't have to be, you still want to be your authentic self, but you have to be the best version of you, which is a little bit of acting. It's kind of drawing on the things that you're good at, you at your most confident, you at your most empathetic. So that's something that that does make autistic people good at sales. Although I do agree with you, traditionally, not so much.
So I guess, so to sum it up, so you're saying that if you're autistic, you probably are already used to kind of mask and to kind of adapt to the other person, because usually you are a bit different than the others. So you try to, let's say if the other person is there and you are there, then you go more towards them. And now if you have a customer, then you are already used to this kind of movement that you are kind of changing yourself a bit towards the other person, which might be might not have been necessary for a person which is neurotypical.
Exactly. And that the thing is, of course, autism is a spectrum. So it depends how far up the spectrum you are, if you like. Clearly, people that are really high up on the spectrum, you know, some of them struggle even with talking. So it depends on how far up the spectrum. Clearly, I'm at the lower end of the spectrum. That I think we can agree on.
Yeah, I guess a lot of what you were talking about sounded very familiar to me. So I'm wondering, so when you do it in sales, you have a reward, which is basically you get a commission or something, you get moving up the career ladder. So you kind of, you act a little bit, you change yourself a bit, and then you get money, for example. But so let's say you do it in your social life and you do this sort of masking, you might get popular, but the other people might befriend a mask of you and not yourself, and you might be in that situation. Oh, now I'm this really popular person, but I'm feeling I'm not authentic. I don't have the authenticity anymore. So yeah, how did you feel about that?
Yeah, well, when I got diagnosed, I realised pretty much exactly that I had a large group of friends, several close friends, who had never really met me. You know, what they'd met was a facade of me. They'd met me at my best, always. Me at my most positive. Because I daren't show them the real me. It was quite challenging, but the main ones, the ones I'd been closest with, thankfully, were all very accepting, and yeah, honestly, getting diagnosed was one of the, it wasn't as good a decision as adopting a child, but it was a very good decision, because it allowed me to start, basically to reduce my stress, because it's one of the most stressful things you can do is to constantly be putting on an act for other people and feeling like you can't be yourself, you can't say what you really think, that is draining to do it every single day. I was very relieved when people stuck around after getting to know the real me from there on.
So when you work with your your employees, so it's not like your employees, but the people you are basically managing. So
No, they're employees. They're mostly numbers to me. Yeah.
Nice.
No.
So are you also putting on a mask there, or are you more authentic?
I definitely used to put on a mask in work, and then I had a really tricky 12 months or so after being diagnosed, where I started to take the mask off at work and found out that not everyone liked that. They were like, we preferred the other John, the one who was always happy to help and never got upset. We prefer that John to this John, who seems to be more like a real person and have, negative feelings. This John's harder to work with. I even had my manager say to me that there were people in the business who thought I was challenging to work with. And I went, well, I'm kind of figuring out who I am, so that's understandable, I said to her. I said, but, I'll get there, but I need a bit of time to figure out who I am, and unfortunately that's impacted my work. The good news is I managed to figure it out, and I managed to find a balance now where they get good John and real John, if you like, in about equal measure now.
But what's the main difference between the masking John and the real John? You said like that the real John gets upset now and then.
Masking John, if a colleague gives me an idea that I know is a bad idea and they need me to do something about the idea, masking John will say something like, that's a really, that's great. Yeah, I'll go and do that and we'll see how it works out and I'll come back to you. And then masking John would go and do 2 hours of work for an idea he knows is a bad idea, bring it back, send it to them, and wait for them to reach that conclusion. And it turns out, Jan, they don't always reach that conclusion, and sometimes the bad idea actually happens, and then real problems happen because of it. Whereas real John will just say, let me stop you there. This seems like a bad idea. I can see you've got good intentions, but here's the reasons I think this is a bad idea. How do we overcome that? Now, I still try and be solution-focused, but I'm more real with my opinions, which not everyone likes, because it means I don't just say yes all the time like I used to.
Logic says no. We move on with the next topic. Would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
That's a good question. I would say I'm an extrovert, based on the fact that I have spent so much of my life trying to be the centre of attention and be the person that was popular and looked to. It's hard to do anything else. So even though I'm being real, I'm being real, and I can't almost get rid of the fact that I've always been loud, Jan. Like, that's when I was a child, I remember being told off for shouting when I was just talking. And it still happens now that my wife will say things like, well, why are you shouting at me? And I go, I'm not. But because my voice is so loud, it can come across like I'm shouting, which I don't think is a very introverted quality. So
I'm not sure if that's like the main criteria for being introvert. I always thought it's more like how you recharge. So is it more that like when you do a lot of stuff that it kind of recharges you, or is it more that you say like, okay, I had a long working day, now I need to have a lot of silence, I need to be on my own, I want to be in nature. I guess I consider that more to be an indicator for introvert, extrovert.
If we're using that as the criteria, can I be both?
Yeah, I guess there's ambiverted kind of. It's fine. It's a spectrum, and you can be in between.
Yeah.
So
the reason I'm saying that is because when I've had a long day, initially, I want to be on my own. I want to be on GPRO running a game and relaxing that way. But I want to do that for maybe an hour, and then I want company. Then I want my wife or a friend, someone like that.
So I guess, yeah, it's probably ambivert. It's something not extreme in one or the other direction. And who do you think
right.
Has the edge in sales? Because at first you might think, sales, this is like an extroverts thing. You need to talk, and you see like Wolf of Wall Street, how to sell a pen. I probably know that movie. But then you said like you have 2 ears and one mouth, so you should listen more than talk. So for example, I'm really far on the introvert spectrum. I kind of use it as my strength in sales, because I'm like in this 2-hour sales call, and I'm like having like 20 pages of notes, because the other person is doing all the talking, and they are like perfectly fine, and say like, oh great, that person is listening, and like I'm probably a good listener. I can comprehend quite well also what I'm basically doing in this podcast. So I always said like, oh, I can't do sales because I'm an introvert, and then I realized it might actually not necessarily be a bad thing. So what's your experience?
My experience is that the crucial thing is that you have confidence. You can absolutely be an introverted salesperson and be very good, like you say, because you're probably a more natural or more naturally effective listener. The crucial thing is, though, you have to have the confidence to ask the questions in the first place to get them talking, and then the confidence to then give the pitch at the end. But if you can get to that level of confidence, you're right, introverts have the edge. Although it's interesting because you mentioned Wolf of Wall Street, back in the 1980s, extroverts had the edge because the internet didn't exist. So nobody could check anything. So if you made a claim in sales and you said, oh, we are the biggest and the best and the most amazing, no one could say anything. And at that time, salespeople were kind of just trusted. And you see it in America, interestingly. In America, as I've been over there twice, so my company sent me to New York twice to deliver training, which was very cool. But over there, they hold sales in much higher esteem. So when I said I'm a sales trainer over there, they reacted like I think people here would react if I said, oh, I'm a heart surgeon. It was that level of, oh, wow, oh, that's impressive. Which here you tell people you're a sales trainer or a training manager, and they go, "Oh, okay." So yeah, but yeah, in America it's definitely a bigger thing, which I think is interesting because I think you find maybe more natural extroverts in America. So if you're able to do that consultative listening thing, then it has a bigger impact.
So I guess sales, I think it has this like, it kind of has sometimes a little shady image I think in Germany. So here in Germany, people are not so like entrepreneurship friendly. So when you drive a Ferrari in the US, you probably get a lot of more appreciation than you would get here in Germany. It might be, I guess the UK is closer to Germany than the US, not only geographically, but in terms of the mindset. So yeah, I mean, in the US, if you say like you make this much commission or this much, then people start listening. Oh yeah, do you have some tips and stuff? And he's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely the case.
Nice. So maybe we can switch a bit more to the GPRO stuff. So you told me that you hold a world record with Stefan Voggenreiter, who turns out to be the co-founder or founder together with Vlad of GPRO or GPRO. So how did that come?
So it's a long story, but I'll try and tell it succinctly. So I've always been into my go-karting, and the world record is jointly held for the longest go-karting race in history, which is 111 hours. This is a long time. And the way this came about was that having at university, I was the president of the Go-Karting Society, and I was pretty good. From that, I got sort of scouted, as it were, by a company called Race Drivers Inc., who put forward teams for 24-hour go-karting races. So I did a load of 24-hour karting races, including racing at Le Mans, which was pretty exciting. And then, which was also a round of the European Karting Championship. And from there, I think I attracted Stefan's attention as a strong go-karter. So it was because it was a German attempt. It was Stefan that invited me to come and take part. So it wasn't something that I knew anything about until Stefan called me up. Would you like to know how I met Stefan? Would that be interesting to say?
So maybe my first question would be, how did you, so was it because of GPRO that you knew Stefan, that contact was because of GPRO, or were you already in GPRO at that time?
Yeah, so I joined GPRO in 2008. And in terms of Stefan, I first met him at a GPRO meeting. I actually hosted the GPRO meeting in Manchester in 2009, I think it was, maybe 10. It was fairly early on in my GPRO time. That was where I met him for the first time. But I didn't really get to properly know him and be friends with him until my first wife did a year abroad in Germany. And she lived just outside Munich. And I dropped Stefan a line because I remember him mentioning Munich, and I said, oh yeah, well, I'm going to go over to visit my wife, but she's busy on one of the days that I'm there. Would you like to meet up and do some go-karting? And Stefan went, yeah, of course. Where does your wife live in Germany? And I said, well, she lives in a place called Baltham. And Stefan went, no, she doesn't. I went, yeah, I'll check. Yeah, she does. It's called Baltham. It's a little suburb of Munich. And Stefan went, but I live in Baltham, and Baltham is a tiny place. I mean, it's in the same country as you, Jan. Had you ever heard of it? No. It's tiny. And there's only about 10 streets in the place. But my wife was literally living 5 minutes walk from Stefan's house. So I went over, that's my first wife, I went over and essentially made the 5-minute walk, got to meet Stefan, his wife and his child, and met up, we went go-karting, and then that coupled with the fact that I was winning the GPRO karting races at the time, had a little bit less weight back in those days. But yeah, the fact I was winning those, I think, was what led to my invitation and being able to then get the world record.
So did you have a crash in 111 hours?
Me personally, I don't think I did. Watch Stefan add a comment on the forum now to say John crashed several times. I don't remember having a crash. What I do remember is that, because it was a race, right? So even though you were just doing it for the 111 hours, it was which team could do the most laps won the event. We all have the record, but it was still a race. So I remember in the pits, the speed limit was walking pace. So the karts were low tech. There wasn't a pit lane limiter. And so what the organisers said is that when the kart comes into the pit lane, one of your team has to meet the kart and walk in front of it so we know it's walking pace. And if you run, you'll be penalised. And when I was younger, I did a little bit of race walking.
I was about to say that you need a race walker for that.
Exactly. It's exactly what I did. So our pit stops, we also had really, really good techie people that were like mechanical people that were very good at like changing the tyres and doing the fuel and all that. But yeah, it was me for our section of the team that was doing the pit lane walking. And I reckon I bought us about 3 seconds a pit stop. Based on that, 'cause it's quite a long pit lane. Tiring for me, but quite fun.
How often? But I guess how long were when you have 111 hours? How many people did share one team?
So our whole team was, I think, 12 people, but we split into two teams of 6 for each 24-hour stint. So we basically did a day on and a day off, because when you're 6 of you are racing for 24 hours, the kart's fuel tank will only go for about 2 hours. So essentially, you will have, I think I'm right to say that's 2 turns across the 24 hours of 2 hours apiece, and you've got about 10 hours to relax in between your turns. But because that means you're awake for a 24-hour period, if you think about it, you don't normally stay awake for 24 hours on the go. And of course, you've got to then factor in the time it takes to get to the track, the time it takes to leave the track. It's longer than, it's more like 30, 35 hours or so. You end up being incredibly tired by the end. So the following day, you mostly sleep. Have something to eat, relax a little bit, and then go back to the track to do it all again. And it was obviously 24 hours, 48, 72, 96, and then the last sort of 15 hours, we all came back together and just whoever still felt like going in a go-kart got to race. And I definitely felt like going in a go-kart still, but less than usual, let's say, because I was pretty tired by that point.
I guess if you have like 12 people, I thought my first idea would be to split it to have 12 people 2 hours a day. So you could basically just do that 2-hour stint and you could go home for like 20 hours and you always would race at the same time of the day. You could kind of, if you set it up like in a smart way, then people might already like adjust to the sort of time they are, like kind of jet lag that they will be racing on. So that would be my way of approaching that race.
If the pit stops happened without anybody in the team being involved, that could work. But because in the pit stop you ideally want one person on each tyre, plus someone refueling, plus someone walking in front of the car, in an ideally, which you don't always have, by the way, because there's only 6 of us in total, so kind of 5 people getting involved with the pit stop. If there was only you and the next driver at the track, your pit stops would be so slow. So for that reason, that wasn't viable. So that's why we split it up. Yeah, that's why. Also because
and you had to be there for 24 hours a day to do the race walk in front of the car.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, when you've paid, I mean, it was quite expensive to do, of course, as well, to hire a track for that long. When you paid that much money, you want to get the most out of it. So you want to be at the track and get, the excitement and the fun of it. And yeah, it was a really great experience, albeit very tiring.
How long was the track?
Ooh, God, that's a question. I never measured it, is the honest truth.
But just roughly, how long did one lap take? Because I would be like, if you do it 111 hours, that you'd go crazy at some point.
Well, I'll tell you about that in a second, actually. I think, and Stefan will correct me, I'm sure, because he probably knows. I think it was about maybe just under a minute for each lap. That sounds right. Just under a minute for each lap, I reckon. What they did is once, because you're right about the kind of going round all the time thing, I think it was once every 12 hours, maybe once every 24, something like that, they had a safety cart that came out of the pits and basically picked up the race leader and then went into the pits the wrong way. So you then did the next 12 hours in a mirror configuration. So you were going around the same track but backwards. Which, I'll tell you what, when you've worked out all your braking points and everything, and you're then suddenly introduced to a new track, that was tough. Because it was, you don't normally have that you've just been going around one way and then suddenly you're going the opposite way. Which, that was a whole extra challenge, which when that happened at like 4 in the morning, you're already tired, that was tough to get used to.
But didn't you knew that was coming? Because like you say, like you change directions, but it still means you drive like 55 hours in one direction and 55 hours into the other direction. That sounds like more of a appreciated change than like a burden.
So first of all, there's knowing it's coming, and then there's knowing it's coming. As in, that at some point the mirror thing is going to happen, but that doesn't mean that you're prepared for it to happen. That also, when you're out on track, if it happens in the middle of your stint, you're not focusing on, I'm going to go and do a mirror of this track. You're focusing on the next corner, the next overtake, because you have to. You're going at those karts were doing anything up to 80 miles an hour. So you're really having to be focused on what's going on around you. Which meant that when the mirror thing happened, it really messed with your head, because it just in all my years go-karting, that stands alone. It's the only time I've ever done a track backwards. Never done it on any other track. And if you ask any racer, have you ever raced this track backwards? They will almost all say no, because it just doesn't happen. So it was a very unusual thing to get used to. Although, as you say, a refreshing change. Once you figured it out, it was quite nice to have a new track. The problem is that you very quickly realised there was a layout you preferred, and I actually preferred doing the course backwards. So that was always really annoying when I remember going out on track while it was backwards, and the cart came out 10 minutes into my stint to change the direction. I was in the cart going, no, this is my favourite one. Don't make me do the other one. There's nothing you can do.
I'm kind of familiar of doing courses backwards, because as a video game player, of course, I always change direction to crash into other people. So
you'd have been in your element.
Yeah, but the problem is that the others also change direction, so it's less fun. But yeah, very nice. So you did something like 8,000 laps, 8,000 laps. I would guess if you do a minute, that would be...
sort of number, yeah, that sounds right.
7,000.
I don't have... this is a long time ago. This is, goodness me.
Do you still have the lap in your head if you do it like 1,000 times?
Some of the lap. There was a tricky little S bit I remember going through. And a long banked... well, not banked highly, but a little bit banked corner around the outside. And I remember the pit lane, because I walked through it so many times. But yeah, no, I couldn't. I don't have the full lap, just sections.
Did you win the race?
No, not even close. But it was an incredible experience, just being at a track for that long and spending that much time with that many other racers. Just it was really good fun. We didn't lose. We weren't last. But I think we were about in the middle, if memory serves me. I think there may have been about 40 teams, 30 or 40 teams, and we were about 20th, 19th, that kind of number, I think.
But that's a lot of karts if you have a 1 minute track and you have 40 karts in that means there's just over a second in average between
I think
two cars.
30. I think 30 is close to the number, maybe 32, something like that. But yeah, it was crowded. That's true. There was a really interesting thing I saw in the way that maybe it's not just Germans, but certainly those Germans, the way they raced compared to the way we race in the UK is very different. So when we do 24-hour races in the UK and you're in your kart, your pure focus is on maximising your position, right? So anything you can do to improve your position, you will do. So if you can overtake somebody by compromising your line and their line, but their line more, you will make that pass. In Germany, you race to maximise your time, which meant that what would happen is that the German racers, which was 90% of the grid were German, there were other countries as well, but the German racers, maybe some of the others, would just be in this long line of karts. Because even though it was a tiny, tiny aerodynamic advantage to be behind another kart, it was an advantage, and so that would maximise your time, even though it didn't maximise your position. Whereas I would come up to the back of one of these trains of cars and go, brilliant, I can overtake 10 people. And sometimes I was good enough and quick enough that I would overtake the train and carry on. And sometimes I would pull out from the train and they would disappear. And I would just be on my own because I hadn't maximised the aerodynamic element and the wind was blowing in a certain direction that cost me time. So yeah, it was a double-edged sword, let's say, that different way of racing.
So it's a bit like in cycling. So when you are in that big peloton and then you try to attack and then you burn too much resources, and as soon as you fall off the back, you don't have the air you have the air resistance, and then you might peel off the back.
Exactly, but obviously with cycling, you see it that with the headwind, a massive headwind will cause a big peloton a huge problem, but a tailwind will have the opposite effect. And it was the same here. It depended when I caught the train and what the wind was doing. I remember it being quite windy that time of year as well, so that made it quite interesting to race in those conditions.
Was there anyone else from GPRO in that race?
Stefan Voggenreiter and Stefan Heider, and that was it, I think. I don't remember there being anyone else. Excuse me, apologies if anyone watching this was in that race and I've forgotten you, but I think it was just the two Stefans and me.
Okay, Stefan Heider was also on your team?
Yes. Yeah,
nice.
You rarely see one of the two Stefans at a GPRO event without the other one. They kind of come as a package deal.
Do you still have contact with them or do some karting?
So the only karting I do these days is at the GPRO meeting, where both Stefans are always there, I'm always there, and there's a core group of about 12 of us, I think it is, something like that, who go to every meeting and who race there. And what I've noticed is that as my weight has increased with my stomach going out, my performance in the go-karting races at these meetings has declined. So I used to win them. I went through a streak of winning, I think like 2 or 3 years in a row, I think I won the whole thing. And then I haven't won a race at one since about 2016, something like that. I don't think I've won one since then. I was competing with Stefan Voggenreiter for first place, and then I was competing with Stefan Heider for second place. And last year in Romania, I was competing with Attis Proudens for third place, and only just got that. Just.
Is there footage of that race or any of those races?
There is, but the footage is either from Stefan Voggenreiter's helmet camera, which is some of the most boring go-karting footage you can ever see, because he's in first place. So he doesn't see anything for the first 10 minutes of the race. You're just seeing the track, and then eventually you see back markers until you see the checkered flag. That's it. That's the whole recording. Every now and again, there's footage of a spectator that'll take pictures of things, but often in go-karting races, the spectator area doesn't have good visibility of the track, so it's rarely very good quality, unfortunately.
Well, I will check YouTube if I find something, so maybe I can ask the person if I can cut a little bit into the podcast, which I did last time with Gabriel. So
I remember, I liked that.
Did you see the podcast?
I did, yeah, I watched both.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I liked it. That was the reason that I reached out to you, was I really liked the way that you ran them.
Cool, thanks. And let's maybe talk about, you talked about the GPRO meeting. So how many people are there usually, and how is it decided where the GPRO meeting is located? Because I've seen it in different countries, so...
Yeah, so I actually, I'm going to bring up the list on my phone. Oh, hang on. Let me call back here. Sorry, my laptop does not
you
like
don't want
me
to forget
opening
anyone.
No, I don't want to forget anyone, exactly. So I actually worked out who the kind of core group of people are, so I will bring that up while I'm answering you. But yeah, the meeting process is really interesting. I find it interesting anyway. In that we... in that every year we essentially accept nominations, I guess. People put themselves forward to say, hey, I am willing to host a meeting in my home country, ideally home city. And then I'm kind of the unofficial admin of meetings, I guess, in that it's me that then says, right, who's offering? Okay, this year we've got Finland or Romania. Those are our two choices. Obviously, there could be more than two, but last year I think it was just those two. Possibly Spain as well. Point being that I will set up a poll within like the thread to say, right, which one do people want to go to? It's then democratically decided. It's then approved by the admins. So, for example, if somebody pitched Brazil, which is somewhere I know that Stefan Voggenreiter would love to go to, but his wife won't let him, as I understand it, I think. So if Brazil won the poll, that would then go to Stefan and Vlad, and they would then say, yes, we will do it, it'll be an official meeting, or no, we won't. They've never said no so far, by the way. They've always said yes, though it's always been Europe, so who knows. But yeah, once they've said yes, I then will go back to the relevant person and say, okay, well done, you've won. You now need to plan the meeting. And we'll then vote on dates for the meeting as well, to make sure it's a date that most people can make. And then the host cracks on and plans it. And I want to give a shout out at this point to Liviu Sandu from Romania, because he planned last year and it was the best planned meeting I think we've ever had. Or right up there. If not the best, it was one of the best.
So it's a bit like in the Olympics. So you kind of have different people who want to host it, and then it's about how many people you can bribe to vote for you.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, I don't know how much bribery goes on, but yeah, there's definitely that kind of theme. Would you like the list of core attendees that go every year?
Sure, of course.
Okay, so you have me, Stefan Voggenreiter, Stefan Haider, Vlad, El Presidente, of course. You then have Atis Proudens, Harry Pacosta. I should give nationalities here as well. Atis from Latvia, Harry from Estonia, Jukka Sirani from Finland, Ilya Lilov from Bulgaria, Sebastian Jozwiak from Poland, George Togas from Greece, Vitaly Sevov from about 5 different countries, to be honest, but Russia and Spain most predominantly. He has a Russian flag on the forums, I think, in memory serves. Raymond Utans from Latvia, and Zlatko Christoph from Bulgaria. So those are the 13 that go to loads of meetings. There are other people that used to go to them all, like Jimmy DeRoy from Belgium, John McLean from Scotland, Jun from Hong Kong / Cambridge in England. But unfortunately, they don't all go nowadays.
But it seems that the countries that you mentioned, they are pretty much all East Europe, basically. Some are from the north, some are from the south, but it seems to be like a East Europe cartel. So,
yeah.
which
there should be a notification, shouldn't we? We should have that. Like, we've got too many Eastern European managers negotiating with this destination.
I mean, but it seems to be that if you have these kind of people, then a country like, let's say, Romania or Hungary, that seems to be somewhere in the middle. So it seems to be logistically a lot better than if somebody would say, let's do it in France, or Germany might be like on the side somewhere. So to me, it seems that it would always probably be somewhere in that area, but then it also attracts only the people who are living in that area. So it kind of like keeps going that way, because there are countries which are a lot more dominant in GPRO. I think Brazil, there are a lot of managers are from Brazil, Argentina, South America in general, couple of people from Germany, from Great Britain. So yeah, do you think that it's because of the location, because it has at some point it kind of went that direction?
Potentially, that's probably as I say it. It's interesting to note, though, that the country we've been to most often is actually the UK. We've been twice to the UK and only once to every other country. And we've done Spain as well. So we do go to Western Europe as well, although admittedly, most of the time it is Eastern Europe. I'm really hopeful we'll go to Finland, though, because Jukka puts it forward every year, and every year it's a different country that seems to win. But if anyone's watching this, vote Jukka, vote Finland. He'll do an amazing job. All right. Remember, he's a multiple GPRO champion. If he can do that, he can organise a GPRO meeting. I've organised 1.5 of them, so it can't be that hard.
By the way, you remind me that I might be doing a podcast with Jukka. I will ask him again. He said maybe, so let's see.
He's a fascinating guy. He's he's really interesting. I'm a big fan of Jukka, so yeah, I would watch that.
Nice. So yeah, maybe I for me it's not completely unimaginable to would be hosting something in Germany, but it seems to be a bit like, first of all, logistically suboptimal compared to a location which is a bit more to the east regarding the people you mentioned on that list, and it might be a little more expensive than one of those countries. So it might be for you, it's probably affordable, I guess, after I pay you today.
But bear in mind, we've done London before. We've done Barcelona is not as bad as London, but we did London. So Munich, for example, or wherever else in Germany, would not be Bielefeld, if it exists.
Find out.
You can find it. That would be that would definitely be possible. And remember, one of the key people making the decision about which country to go to is Stefan Voggenreiter, who, of course, is German, and his vote really counts for two because they're Stefan Heider as well. And I would always choose Germany because I speak German and I love the country. So you'd have at least three of us straight away going, yeah. So, definitely Germany is a possibility. We haven't actually done it since I started coming to meetings, which was 2009. So it's been, 16 years since GPRO. And I think it wasn't even GPRO. I think it was F1 Live or something like that. Because they kind of transferred those meetings to GPRO meetings. They have been to Germany, but it was, I reckon over 20 years ago. So I think it's time.
So maybe I will have that on the back of my mind. And
what's the nearest big city to Bielefeld in Germany?
Come on, Bielefeld is a big city.
No, sure, but I mean like big city.
Big city. No, I mean, how many people do you refer to as big?
Oh God, I don't know exactly. I mean, I'm just thinking about like major airports. Where's the nearest major airport?
I think Cologne is but it's 200 kilometers. I mean, there are airports around, so you could be in Paderborn, for example, which is like 30 minutes away from Bielefeld. That is not an issue. I mean, we have been going from there multiple times into the holidays, so for that it's completely enough. So I mean, Bielefeld has, I think, around 330,000 people, so it's not necessarily small.
No, it's bigger than I realised. Then, the reason I say that is because one of the things that we usually go to capital cities. It's very rare we don't go to a capital city, and the reason we go to a capital city is because people like to sort of see the famous landmarks within that country, which often are within the capital city. So it's not that we can't do a meeting somewhere like Bielefeld. And it would be interesting to see if it would get votes, actually, because people might go, actually, let's do something a bit different. Let's go somewhere that isn't famous. We did do Manchester. It's not the capital of England, and there aren't many famous landmarks in Manchester. We did that. So it's possible. It just hasn't happened for 16 years. So I don't know, but it might get the votes. You put it up there, Jan, then we'll see.
So you've always been in a big city so far?
Correct.
Because I'm actually not so much the big city type, so I prefer a little landscape and nature. So it would be interesting to see how people in GPRO, I would guess a lot of people who are in GPRO might be introverts, but then probably the extroverts are the people who attend such a meeting. So I don't know.
Maybe, although I will say that a lot of the people in the meeting are not the most socially adept, let's say. I won't name names. But a lot of them are introverts, but they know that they're going to go and spend time with people that, even if you have nothing else to talk about, you have GPRO. So you can talk about your career, you can talk about how messed up the sponsor system is, right? You can have these conversations safe in the knowledge that, you're going to get on with the person because you share that love of GPRO. But yeah, there are definitely extroverts there, but it's not 100% extrovert. There are introverts who enjoy the meetings as well.
What's the typical schedule there? So do you have some rituals which happen at every GPRO meeting?
So if you do want to host one, or anyone watching this wants to host one, where you're doing it needs to have somewhere to go karting, most important thing. somewhere to go bowling, ideally, somewhere to go drinking and eat, like restaurants, that kind of thing. Ideally more than one, so you get a sense of the different places there are and different cuisines on offer. And somewhere to watch the Formula One. So that means it's got to be a function room. So in Romania, we were in the hotel function room, and they had like a big screen they put up for us. In most other countries, we've just been in a bar and they've put the Formula One on for us. Sometimes in our own special room, depends how organised the host was. But that's again the nice thing about a big city is normally they have several options, so you can choose the best option. When you go smaller, you're often limited on options, so you end up compromising quality. So that's another reason it tends to be big cities. But yeah, those are the things that happen. The kind of the schedule, if you like, is normally everyone turns up, usually Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, sometimes Friday morning. Sometimes there's some sightseeing Friday morning, Friday afternoon, before kind of the first big official thing is normally bowling on the Friday evening. Then going out for drinks, but not too heavy, because Saturday is the go-karting race. So it's usually, depending on the time of F1 qualifying, it's either karting then quali or quali then karting. Lunch at some point as well. And then Saturday night is the big night. So not everyone goes out drinking, not everyone likes to, that's fine. But those of us, which includes me, who do like a drink, Saturday's when we'll go hard, because we've done the go-karting now. We don't have to wake up early the next day. We can just go and, let our hair down, so to speak. And then Sunday, we watch the F1 race. There's been a bit of a tradition at a lot of places where we've ended up playing pool quite a bit as well, or table football in recent times too. But that's not official, that's just something that keeps happening.
And the location where your residence, is it chosen by the host, or is it like the host says, okay, here we will meet, and then look for somewhere you will spend the night?
In any GPRO meeting, the meeting place is almost always the admin hotel, as it's known. So called because it's the hotel the admins have booked into. And so most of us don't book any accommodation. I remember Liviu did a really good bit of work coming up with like, here are some hotels, here's the one I recommend. And then he was like, why has no one booked their hotel? And we were like, because we're waiting for the admins. Because you can recommend the greatest hotel in the world. If the admins choose a hotel on the opposite side of the city, we're all going there, right? Even if it's the worst hotel ever. They've got good taste, though. It's normally great. But yeah, so the admins book their hotel. Then everyone else either does the same hotel or a different hotel, maybe a cheaper one, which is near to where that hotel is. So that's usually how it works. But yeah, Liviu did an amazing job because he actually got a discount from the hotel if we basically phoned up and quoted, I think it was GPRO we had to say, and they were like, oh great, and he got like 20% off the price or something for us all, which that's never happened before. So like I say, incredible hosting from Liviu.
So then if I would host the meeting, then I would not be choosing the hotel because you wait for the admins to do the decision anyways.
But if you recommend a hotel to the admins, then we'll all likely go there.
Okay, so
if they accept
you have to know who you have to convince.
Exactly.
Nice. So I already a good thumbnail would be for the video. This is what really happens at the GPRO meeting, and then to have some cocaine in the background.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of alcohol, but I've never seen any drug taking, so I don't think that happens.
Just for the clickbait.
Yeah. No, there's. At the one in Romania, I was very surprised because I arrived late on the Thursday night, like really late, like nearly midnight, and I got a message to say they were all out drinking, which was rare. And I went to this bar, and I got there, and at least two of them were talking to girls. That doesn't normally happen. That's new. A group of kind of motorsport, and I say this with affection, nerds, right? A group of motorsport nerds, motorsport geeks, Like, we don't normally go and talk to the girls. We just talk about motorsports and, have a laugh. But yeah, a few of them were talking to girls, which was a first time for everything there, I guess. But but yeah, that's let's say that those girls, their time wasn't free. But I don't know if the guys knew that when they were talking to them. But they found out later that yeah. So that's the kind of girl that they end up talking to. But that is a one-off, I hasten to add. It doesn't happen every time.
Nice.
Yeah,
so
that's what really happens.
If you're watching now, how many people are there usually? So what's the typical?
13 that are every time, and then you have locals. So anything from 15 to 20, I'd say usually.
Okay, I thought it would be a little bit bigger, but yeah. I mean, if you're considering of attending now, you might have a little bit more details on how things are going. So basically, you have 3 full days with the people there. You arrive like very late on Thursday, and then you would have the Friday, the Saturday, and Sunday, and then they're leaving at Sunday evening.
Usually, yeah, or Monday morning, yeah. Depends on what you want to do. It's worth noting that we've got a bit of a record going at the moment, a bit of a streak going, where people that have come to a meeting have enjoyed it so much they then come to the next one each time. So there's people like Seb went to the Polish one, Ilya and Zwatko went to the Bulgarian one, and then they've come to other meetings. So newcomers at this meeting were Liviu and Niels. I think it's Niels. Apologies if I've got that wrong. I think it was Niels. Yeah, it's Niels, tall guy. But yeah, the two of them were new, so hopefully we're going to see them in future years as well. Because yeah, people really enjoy it because it's just such a nice, relaxed vibe. Yes, you've got the go-karting and the bowling, but they sort of stand separate. And if you're crap at those things, you don't have to take part. If you don't want to, some people don't. Or if you do take part and you're crap, that's fine, right? It'd actually be worse if you took part and you were great, to be honest, because then one of us wouldn't win. So actually, people being bad at either of those things is always welcome. Always welcome.
Nice. So I wanted to start a little bit of go-karting, so maybe I have to ask you for some tips there. But
lose weight.
So you don't have any counterweights. So I know in Formula 1 there's this barrier, I think at 75 kilo, that prevents people of getting anorexic because every kilo has a pretty big difference. I remember Nico Rosberg said that he was cutting off his socks to just save a few grams of weight there. Also, you see the same in ski jumping, where the weight matters a lot, where people got anorexia, and then I think they changed something about the skis. And if you have in Formula 1, okay, there's a lot more at stake, but the effect of 1 kilo in percentage is, of course, much more in a go-kart than in an F1 car, which weighs like 800 kilos.
Jan, are you saying that Formula 1 is more important than a GPRO go-karting race? Not sure I agree with that. No. Yeah, so it depends on the track, to be honest. There are some tracks that will have really like up-to-date karts, and they will have weights, and they will have scales, or they trust you to say how much you weigh, which is always a bit dicey, because you could just say any number, right? And they will have it so you are equalised across the field. To be honest, that's the minority. Most of the tracks we go to, they're good tracks, and they're good karts, but they either don't have the facilities set up, or they do and we can't be bothered to use them. So, yeah, it tends to be that we all end up just driving what we have. It's just fun at the end of the day, Jan, you know. I made the joke before, but that was a joke, right? It's not actually that serious.
How much you weight right now?
Don't know, you know. I genuinely, I'm maybe 14 stone, something like that.
14?
Stone.
What's that?
Because I'm British, we measure weight in stone. Let me tell you, 1 stone, I'll tell you how many kilograms that is. 1 stone is 6.35 kilograms. So 14 times 6.35, like maybe 90 kilos, something like that. 90, obviously.
I always thought that the US would be weird with their metrics, but I guess stones take it to another level.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, in England we're very weird. We don't just have one thing for weight. If you're weighing yourself, it's stones. If I was weighing a bag of flour, it would be kilos. Like we dance between metric and imperial as we like. We just do whatever. If I'm measuring a ship, I'm measuring it in tons. We just change it for whatever we're measuring.
No, I mean, for me, I'm a physicist, so for me, everything is fine as long as you're working with SI units. But everything else is a crime, so don't do that.
Oh yeah, in English we use various measurements for various things, and we'll throw imperial measurements in when it suits us. We'll use miles when we want to, but sometimes we'll use kilometers. We'll just change it up depending on what we're measuring.
I think there is a story where the US, they tried to send a rocket to, I think, the moon or the Mars, and it just straight crashed into the planet because they mixed miles per hour and kilometers an hour, and then they had too much speed, and that happens when you don't use SI units, guess.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
And how is your GPRO career going? You're in master now, I've seen.
Yeah, so bearing in mind, I joined GPRO in 2008, and I quite quickly got the hang of the fact that to be really good, you had to be in a team. So I joined a team called the Twilight Zone team that Thomas Whippich headed up, and then that team became Vasant, which is where I am now, still. And with a career break in the middle. And what I very quickly found, Vasant is the same team that Jukka Sironi won his titles in. So we've always been a good team. We always have the tools to get to the top. The challenge for me is that while I'm good with a spreadsheet, I just don't have the detail and the willingness to really go to the level you have to be to become an elite champion. So I kept getting to master and then just failing. So if you look at my GPR career, it's like, oh, okay, he's done well in rookie, he's done well in amateur, he's done well in pro, he's got to master, oh no, it's all gone wrong. He went negative, he scored no points, he was awful. Now he's back to pro, now he's back to amateur to rebuild again. I just kept going up and down. And then 2 seasons ago, I came up to master, and I was the most prepared I'd ever been, and I managed to score my first points and to retain. I was honestly, Jan, when I retained, I genuinely I ran up to my wife and gave her a big hug and started jumping up and down because as I said, that was 16 years in the making. So it took so long to achieve that. And then last season, I chose Avon's because my finances were in ruins from trying to survive the previous season. And it very quickly became clear to me I need to get a driver with FTs, to have any chance here and hope it rains on the FTs. And it wasn't enough. I just wasn't anywhere near. And then I was utterly shocked that on the final race of the season, 3 people above me went into massive negative in order to relegate, and I survived. I think I was the 24th out of 24 or whatever the number is. I just survived, but this season the finances were ruined, and I hadn't been able to test much in order to try and survive. So I chose Pippies this season. I will. If I survive this season, because I've already got my pro level driver picked, he's already racing for me. If I survive this season, it'll take 10 people going negative above me. There's no way I'm going to survive this season. So I will be going down to pro again. But I feel like now I've overcome that barrier. The next thing I want to try and do is reach elite. I don't know if I'll ever make it, but that's the next plan, if I can.
Did I mention that I offer GPRO training for £4,000 a day?
Sign me up. Sounds good.
I guess we're even then.
How much for me to get you to run my account for a day?
£4,000.
Well, that's right. Cool. I'll think about it.
I guess that kind of evens up the money I owe you.
Yeah, we'll just call it even. But you
Yeah,
now
I
have to
guess.
do my account for at least 2 hours.
I guess the problem is that one day is probably, since GPRO is a long-term game, you probably have to sign up for my elite class, which takes a year and costs 100k. So,
Got you. Wow.
yeah.
I mean, it sounds great. I mean, anyone watching this, Jan's elite class, £100,000, bargain.
Bargain.
You know, it's priceless being a GPRO champion, right?
Sure. I mean, there are things you can't buy. So, yeah. Thank you very, very much for like sharing your time. I guess you seem to be like really busy being a father now and with that career stuff, being a national trainer. So appreciate really that you took the time nonetheless. And yeah, thank you very much. And I wish you all the best.
Likewise. Thanks, Jan. Have a good one.